Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for watching this video today. On this video, we are going to be swapping out my coilovers with an upgraded Maxspeedingrods coilovers. But before this video gets started today, be sure to go down below, give this video a like, and consider subscribing for more content. We have a lot of stuff coming for this year, guys. You definitely don't want to miss it. Alright guys, please excuse the dirty car. I know my car is a little bit dirty right now, but we'll save that for another time. So as you guys see in the last video, we went ahead and put on my Mugen style lip onto my FA5. If you guys didn't know, I actually paint matched this myself. If you guys have not seen that video, go ahead and click on the link right above here so you guys can see the full process of me putting the lip together and painting it for this car. But with that being said, you guys, like I said, we are going to be swapping out my suspension today with the new version of the Maxspeedingrods coilovers. If you guys didn't know, I did make a video of installing the old version or the version 1 of the coilovers that Maxspeedingrods sent me a while ago. So far, those coilovers, you guys, felt phenomenal considering what I was getting and how much budget friendly they are. I highly recommend checking them out, you guys. They're a very good source and also a very good coilover setup that I currently rock. Right now for my coilovers, I had these coilover suspension out for almost 2 years now. So far it's holding up pretty good. Now they've definitely been through a lot of abuse, obviously through the togue and also through daily driving as well, so there's definitely a lot of rust buildup and other components like scratching and everything. But in this case, Maxspeedingrods was nice enough to send me a second version of their new coilover setup in line. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be installing their new version of them. But before we go ahead and get the car jacked up in the air, I just want to give a huge thank you to Maxspeedingrods for giving me another opportunity to test out their new suspension and reviewing the product for you guys. Other than that, let's go ahead and get the car jacked up so we can get started. Alright guys, so I got my car jacked up in the front right now because we're going to be tackling the front suspension first just because it's the most time consuming. The rear coilovers aren't too bad, maybe a little bit difficult, but in terms of putting everything in, it's not that long. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and get the front started. So game plan is we're going to take off the 2 front wheels, take off the plastic trim so we can access the top hats, and then afterwards we can just go ahead and pull it out and put the new setup in. But before we get ahead and do that, let me guys show you the new coilover setup. Alright guys, so we're going to be unboxing the new coilovers right now. So I already went ahead and opened it up before you guys were able to see it, just because I had to do a pre-inspection to see if everything's in the right place and everything's not damaged. But that being said, you guys, these are going to be the newest Maxspeedingrods coilovers for my FA5. So definitely a huge significant difference, bigger springs, different color, and of course different top hat as well. Now, I'll tell you guys right now, first glance, these look amazing. They feel very, very structured. I highly recommend getting a pair like this, you guys. These look out of this world. Alright guys, so these are the version 2 of the Maxspeedingrods coilovers that they sent over to me. From first glance, you guys, these look amazing right out of the box. So if you guys didn't know, the first version I did have were a bright orange color. But for these matte finished carbon steel colored coilovers look amazing, and they're definitely gonna pop on the black FA5. Now, first thing I did notice with these types of coilovers, I believe for the front suspension coilover setup, the springs actually look a little bit bigger than what I currently have. Obviously, when I have the old suspension out, you guys, I will compare the two to show you like what's the big difference. But for these guys here, definitely have, looks like bigger springs. Top hat is a little bit thicker and have more adjustments on the top. And in terms of the rear suspension, looks like it's about the same, but still really cool setup. I can't wait to install these and see how they feel. Alright, now if you guys don't know too much about Maxspeedingrods and you want to enter the car scene too, this is actually a really good chance for you guys to check these coilovers out. Now these guys are very budget friendly coilovers, and they do perform as well as the very high-end coilovers. Now for these guys, they only run about $300 to $400, you guys. So lucky for us, Maxspeedingrods have partners up with me to give you guys a 10% discount code off if you guys are interested. I'll leave the screen right here. Make sure to use code HUMILITY to get 10% off the grand total, so you guys can get a pair of Maxspeedingrods for your build. Now, if you guys are wondering what kind of setup I use for my car, pretty much in terms of like how I set up my coilovers, I obviously have it lowered. Another thing too, I have my spring rates pretty high and rebound, and stiffness all the way maxed out, just because I want to feel the full suspension of pretty firmness, especially when I take my FA5 onto the tow and maybe the track one day. But once we get these coilovers installed, or we're prepping them to get them installed, I will tell you guys exactly what I'm going to be doing to install these guys to make sure it suits my needs to the vehicle. But with that being said, let's go ahead and start taking off the wheels and start unbolting everything off the front suspension so we can go in and get started. Alright guys, so for these version 2 coilovers, pretty much the exact same ones that it has on before. For these guys' features, they are a racing dampening oil and spring rake setup for occasional track use and also daily street use as well, which I am currently rocking at the moment. Obviously for lower height adjustment from 1 to 3 inches, adjustable preload spring tensions in terms of reduced shaking motion, 24 clicks of rebound adjustment to allow dial your coilover system perfectly, high viscosity index dampener oils to make dampening more stable and smooth in a wide temperature range, and a high rigidity 55 CRCI steel cold bent coil springs more than 600 times continually tested to assure its high tensure strength. CNC machine aluminum top mounts and lockers to have excellent strength and save weight, especially on the tow and track runs. All inserts confirmed with fitted long rubber boots to protect dampeners from durability, and of course this beautiful matte finish in carbon steel to avoid any corrosion or rust buildup in the near future. Alright guys, so I got my old front coilover suspension out compared with the new coilover suspension at the moment. So pretty much obviously you guys can tell that it has been through definitely a period of time of daily driving and also tow driving as well. So as you guys can see, I got just brake dust all over. My splines on my coilovers are completely rusted, and of course the top hat is covered in grease and debris. So that won't have to matter any longer, just because we got a fresh new pair from those good people at Maxspeedingrods. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be measuring what I currently have on my coilovers and put them onto the new coilovers. Now on my passenger front side, I do notice that there is a little bit of gap when the car is completely lowered. So what I'm going to try to do is lower it just a little bit more, so that way it eliminates that gap. I might go even a little bit lower too on the driver's side, just so my fitment can be completely flush. And just quick little comparison, you guys. So take a look at my old top hats here. They're very thin, like they're very, I would say, don't get me wrong, these work amazing. But in terms of like the first version to the second version, look how big that thickness is of metal. So there's definitely a big improvement on that. Not only that too, you guys take a look on the top hat here. So it comes with a pretty standard like camber adjustable package and also swiveling neck on the top hat. But if you take a look onto the new coilover setup, we definitely got a heavy load and also a nice touch on the dampening. So we have 10, or I believe 26 clicks total. So I'm gonna go ahead and max this guy out all the way so that we can get that stiff ride quality. And if I need to make some small adjustment, I just dial it back down until I'm happy with. After that, we'll go ahead and figure that out once it's on the car. Alright guys, so I have been adjusting the coilovers to where it suits my specs. So as you guys saw, I did put some grease where the top nut and the top hat sits, just because it's a metal on metal contact kind of area. So I went ahead and lubed it up with some multi-purpose grease from Valvoline. So I put a thin coating and I just pushed it all the way through to the top, so that way it has lubrication on all sides. Now there are some cons when putting grease on there. So even though it's still on the very top of the body, you're still gonna get some debris on the road and dirt and grime. So as you guys can see, some of the dirt and some of the brake dust will start to stick to that brake caliper. But in this case, I'm not too worried about it. This is definitely gonna help you guys out. So when you guys get some coilovers like these, make sure it is greased up at the top hat area, because it's gonna be squeaking if you guys don't put any lubrication. But in this case, we got the coilover set to where it is my preference. I have maxed out the dampening, so that way it's a stiff ride, and I also increased my spring rate as well. As you guys saw in the video, I lowered to the height that's adjusted to my old coilover setup, so it should be spot on. So we're gonna go ahead and get this mocked up to the vehicle and then lower the car, see if there needs to be any adjustment afterwards. If all goes well, we can move on to the rear right after. So I will see you guys in a bit. Alright guys, moment of truth. So I got it measured to where it is my specs, and I'm hoping I don't have to go back and adjust, just because we still haven't done the rear yet. but we just removed the jacks. Let's see how the Civic looks now with the car on the floor. Alright guys, so take a look at the car. So right now there does need to be some adjustment at the moment, so I can fit pretty much half of my hand in here. So we definitely have, I believe, a whole inch to go, and on both sides too. Let me actually show you what it looks like on the driver's side. So on the driver's side, it's actually might be a lot more than just an inch. So it might be an inch and a half. So we'll go ahead and go back and do some adjustments. So let me go ahead and get the car up in the air, and afterwards we'll see how it looks after I'm done. Alright guys, so bad news, I won't be able to finish the coilover install today just because it looks like we ran into that issue where I'm rubbing on the coilover, and for those tires I definitely don't want to ruin them, especially have a blowout while I'm driving on there. So it's going to be postponed until tomorrow. Luckily I did find some wheel spacers to help me with that. They're gonna get dropped off tomorrow morning. I just placed an order on Amazon online not too long ago, so I will show you guys once they get here. But hopefully it fixes that issue, just because I had that issue before, rubbing a tire on a coilover that was on the Datsun. Luckily nothing happened big, but it was definitely a very scary to experience. So for now, I'll see you guys tomorrow and we'll finish that install. Alright guys, welcome back. So it is currently the next day, so we had to get some spacers for my Civic because my tire was rubbing on my coilover setup. So we went ahead and ordered some 1-inch spacers that are bolt-on for my Civic. Now honestly, 1 inch is pretty aggressive. I believe for the fitment, and I believe for the clearance I need to have is about 1 inch or either 2 and 2 millimeters. So I believe this might be the smallest size you can get for having bolt-on ones. But fingers crossed, hopefully we don't have to do any more adjusting, just because I wanted to sit my car a little bit lower. But if it's not, we'll go from there. But we're going to go ahead and pull in the car, jack it up, get it ready, see if the wheel spacers clears the fender and also the coilovers. Then we can move on to the rear if it's all good. So let's go and bring in the car. Alright guys, so we're up my driver's front right now. So as you guys saw in a couple of videos ago, I had this spacer here just because I needed some clearance for my fuel tank line. So we are not going to be rocking this anymore just because we are upgrading to a big massive difference. Obviously we have the 1-inch spacer. Let's see if I can try to hold that for you guys there. 1-inch spacer against, I believe, a .22 spacer. I'm not honestly too sure. I do not remember, but as you guys can see, it is a big difference. So I'm honestly kind of nervous just because 1 inch is pretty aggressive, especially for the wheels offset. So I'm like hoping that I don't have any clearance issues with the fender or the lip as well when I turn the wheel. But another thing too, let's just make sure that it actually goes onto my assembly. Alright, so far so good. Let's go ahead and get these bolts on threaded over here, and then we can put on the wheel and see how it looks. Alright you guys, wheel spacers is on, so obviously definitely an aggressive fitment. But we're going to go ahead and mock the wheel to see everything clears. And if you guys take a look here, with the Maxspeedingrods gunmetal carbon steel color and the black wheel spacer, it really ties everything together. All we need now is just a new brake caliper so we can match everything all together. But let's go ahead and test the wheel on. that is pretty beefy. I'm honestly a little worried that it will look a little goofy once it's on the floor, but my main concern is if it's gonna clear the tire, just because I am rocking a wider tire setup. So I'm gonna go ahead and check underneath the car and see if you might have any rubbing issues whatsoever. Alright, it's gonna be a little bit weird angle for you guys, but pretty much. Alright guys, so we're currently underneath my car, so pretty much right in that spot right here, this little line, that's the inside of my tire, and this is the coilover collar to where we raise up the height. So if you guys can see, we have a big clearance. So honestly, we didn't even have to rock a 1-inch spacers, but oh well. But so far we shouldn't have any more rubbing issues, so we're gonna go ahead and put the wheel spacer on the other side and then lower the car and see how the car looks. And afterwards, we can go ahead and make some adjustment. Okay guys, both front spacers are on, so we're gonna go ahead and lower the car, see how the car looks. Hopefully no rubbing issues, no clearance issues whatsoever. Everything should be all good. So let's go ahead and check it out. Alright guys, so car's on the ground. Honestly, it looks almost flush. Actually, I think it even is flush. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. We definitely do have a little bit of tire poking out still, but do keep in mind the suspension still has to settle in once we start driving on it. The camber is currently maxed out onto the camber plates on the front. We have not touched the rear yet whatsoever. I'm pretty sure we might rub into some clearance issues on the fender, so we might have to roll the fender today. But in this case, you guys, this is how the car looks with those 1-inch spacers. I have a feeling we're not going to be able to clear this fender or lip, so we're going to go ahead and turn the wheels, see if we have any rubbing issues. But so far, you guys, honestly, it looks pretty aggressive. It does look a little wacky, not going to lie, with that spacer behind the wheel. So obviously the tire is not that wide. This is only a 245 and the wheel is only 17/8, so the offset's definitely off. But in this case, I'm liking it a lot so far. Gives that aggressive stance. But let's go ahead and turn the wheels, see if we ever have any rubbing issues. Alright guys, so far on the driver's side, it clears going left. I don't know if this was here before, but there's a little bit of a gap right here in the bumper, but not really too worried about that. But in terms of the other side, let's go take a look. So far it is hard to tell. Let me turn the wheel back. Alright guys, so no rubbing issues whatsoever on turning the wheels, so that's definitely a +1. We do have to make some small adjustments now. There is a little bit of a gap still on the fender, so I kind of want to make it almost completely flush. So I think I'm going to drop it a 1/2 inch more, or in this case maybe even a 1/4 inch, because if you take a look, you guys, it's not even that much left. So we still have some clearance. I think, yeah, like almost 2 fingers of clearance, so we could definitely do some adjustment. So we're gonna go ahead and do that really quick. But other than that, so far so good, you guys. I'm really liking how the car is sitting right now, but let's go ahead and adjust that really quick. Alright guys, so what I ended up doing was I went ahead and dropped it 1/2 inch down, so that way I have some gapness on the fender and tire, so that way the suspension has room to settle in. So eventually when that does happen, it should be almost completely flush. But for you guys, so far everything clears okay. The suspension is lowered and got it to the specs exactly to what I wanted. Now we're gonna move on to the rear of the car. Now the thing is, you guys, the rear might be the most troublesome one, just because 1, tire fitment, and 2, I would say fender rolling. So just because when we do check out those wheels and tires with the new coilovers, we might have the same issue where we're rubbing against the coilover. Another thing too, when we do put on those 1-inch spacers, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna hit the fender, so we might have to roll the fenders in the rear, but it's long due term. Alright guys, so here's the plan for right now. So obviously, like I said, we're gonna have to roll this fender just because I'm pretty sure this fender is gonna hit the tire on the sidewall. So, and for FA5s, they're a little bit different. Usually the front fenders, they're easier to roll, but for these guys, you're gonna have to do some cutting. So a couple of buddies of mine said that they recommend cutting to where this little weld is, I believe it's called. Pretty much it's a whole metal band that goes around the fender. We're gonna have to cut all of that so that way we can actually roll the fender, so that way when it's like this on the inside of the fender, it closes that gap after we cut that out. Alright guys, so I got one of my rear coilovers out, so pretty much I'm just comparing the measurements, making sure they're exactly where it need to be. For the springs, however, they're a little bit different. So for these guys here, these are the ones that'll be adjusting your height, and for your shock, pretty much all you're doing is just measuring to where the holes line up correctly. Now, what we're going to be doing is, you guys, I got the old coilover set up right here. I'm going to do a quick measurement on what height I'm trying to go for. Then I'm just going to put it onto the new coilover setup, and then we can go ahead and install the springs first, then the shock. So I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright guys, so rear suspension is installed. We had a little bit of trouble inside the trunk, but we managed to get it. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be cutting this inner part of the fender so that we can roll them. Then afterwards we can go ahead and roll the fenders and install the wheel spacers. Honestly, we might not even have to install the spacers for the rears today. We can always do it later down the line. Usually the front is the one that was giving me the most issue, but pretty sure this will still clear the coilover. But let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so we have got the rear suspension on. So currently I did not make any huge adjustments. I only put to the desired height I wanted to from the old coilovers. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the car, see how it looks, and afterwards we'll pull it out of the garage. Alright guys, so the car is out of the garage. This is how the car is currently sitting right now. So far, I'm pretty happy with the front. There is a little bit of a gap on the fender and tire, but pretty sure once the suspension settles in, that gap will be completely gone. Now in terms of the rear, we definitely have to go a little bit lower. Probably same thing as before as the front. We just dropped that one a half an inch a little bit more, so that's most likely going to be the same. But all we gotta do now, we're gonna have to jack up one side at a time so we can go ahead and cut the inner side of the fender, then we can roll it. After that, we'll move on to the next step and possibly go to the alignment shop today. Okay guys, so we're gonna go to the official test drive to see how these coilovers feel. Now, if you guys didn't know, so yesterday we only had the front coilovers on, so when I was pulling out the car the first time, there was definitely some clanking noises. I'm not too sure what it is. It could just be like some gaps that just needed to be filled up, and so the suspension needs to be on load. But in this case, we're gonna go for a test drive, see how everything feels and works. Hopefully we don't have to come back or any issues on the front. So far I'm pretty happy to how it is, but let's go ahead and take off. Alright guys, so just so you know, I'm on the max setting for the rebound. So I believe it's around 10 to 26 clicks. So I maxed it out completely to see how stiffness the suspension would feel. So far, feels pretty much about the same from the old coilovers, but the good news is that they're brand new, so we don't have to worry about them breaking anytime soon. So that's definitely a bonus. But in terms of like how it's gonna react in the tow, that's a different story. You guys are gonna have to wait, just because since we had to not put on the spacers on the rear, we definitely need to get some rear camber arms for the car, so that way the car can I would say perform better. But so far you guys, I'm doing like a cruising 40 miles per hour right now. So far the car feels pretty good. I don't feel anything wrong whatsoever. It doesn't feel any loose. Another thing too, since we did put on spacers, I'm waiting to see like if there's any big difference. So far it handles pretty good. Like, I'm liking how the spacers feel. No clearance issues whatsoever. I was very, very nervous that the lip was gonna get hit by my tire, but in this case, looks like we're good for now. terms of the rear suspension, you guys, unfortunately, it's not to my proper spec. Now, I have a feeling because the springs that came with the coilovers, I'm pretty sure they are a little bit thicker. So I'm pretty sure the spring rate is very, very high. So I'm just gonna have to lower the ride height just a little bit to it is within my spec. But that's gonna have to wait till we get those rear camber arms in. In case you guys wondering, how am I filming while I'm driving this time? So I actually got this really, really cool camera mount that is a very, very tight suction pump that can stick to any flat surface, and pretty much it's very, very good. If you guys have not seen my last video, I did a tow run with the camera completely upside down onto the sunroof, and it works phenomenal. Like, it didn't budge whatsoever. So probably in the near future, you guys will probably get some like POV action. As you guys saw, I did get some POV action on the GoPro. Honestly, I checked out the films when I was working on the car and installing those coilovers. The angles look sick. They look amazing. I really hope you guys enjoy those angles too, because I'm blown away like how good the quality is and how good you can see me actually working on parts now. Because back in the day from the old coilovers, you couldn't see whatever I was doing. It was a hassle to get all those angles on this camera. I would say too, I think I'm gonna hold off onto the, I would say the alignment as well, just because since we're gonna get those rear camber arms, they're definitely gonna mess with that suspension tuning as well. So I might as well just wait on it. I'm pretty confident my alignment's still okay, just because when I got my wheels and tires set up the last time, so far it was pretty good. Now I do notice that it might be off just a little bit. I would say in terms of toe and camber, just because caster, we don't really do anything with that. Like, it's mostly toe and camber that we want to focus on this car. Alright guys, so driving for a couple minutes now. So far, hear me out. Our roads over where I live, the roads are really, really bad. Like, there's potholes, rough patches that are just filled up with like loose asphalt liquid. It's not even like flat or clean surface, it's just really rough. But so far, the coilovers are handling those blows really, really nicely. Obviously too, with those Continental tires, that do play a part as well. But in terms of the suspension, especially if you're trying to drive fast in the tow, you want to make sure that the suspension can handle all that abuse. Alright guys, so after the test driving, we are finally back. So I just want to give you guys my pointers and reviews about these coilovers. First of all, the new Maxspeedingrods coilovers feel amazing. They definitely feel a lot stronger from the last version. I'm pretty sure the springs that came onto these coilovers are a lot thicker, so they're twice as bouncier on the road, but that's honestly a +1 for me, just because I do take this to the tow, maybe to the track one day, but I still got a lot of work to do before I even get to there. Alright, and you guys might notice too the quality and how stable the video is. Currently, I am filming on my phone right now. Unfortunately, I forgot all my SD cards back at home, and the one I currently have on my camera is completely full, so we are using this for today. I know this looks really good, you guys, but as for my phone, I don't use it for photography just because it takes a lot of storage. But in this case, you guys, so what we did for now is, if you just to recap everything that we did, we put 1-inch spacers on the front only. The rear needs adjustment. We are planning to roll the rear fenders for now, and also put on the 1-inch spacers, but that might have to change. Alright guys, so I'm afraid I have some bad news on the front suspension area. So remember, we did put on 1-inch spacers onto my front suspension just because my tire was hitting my coilover. So keep in mind, you guys, I have a wider tire setup. Instead of the OEM size, which is 215s, 45/17s, I'm rocking 245 40/17s. Now, in this case, you guys, the 1-inch spacers, it does look really good. I honestly love the way it fits onto the fender. Also, I got a couple of good reviews and also looks from my friends personally. They like how it looks. Fortunately, I might have to downgrade on the spacers to go something a little bit smaller, because if you guys can tell, we're actually cutting the tire on the fender. So that is a big problem, you guys, especially if it's on the sidewall of the tire. These sidewalls are really weak. They're not designed to be cut in, obviously. In this case, like tear off pieces of tire over time. Now, if my fender were to cut a little bit deeper, my tire can have a blowout. And these tires, you guys, are pretty brand new. I only put 4,000 miles on these tires, so I definitely do not want to drive on this car, especially if my tire is being cut by my own fender. Now, you guys, even the way how the car looks, I love the way how the car looks, especially too, a lot of you guys definitely like a flush fitment. For me personally, I like functional fitment. Pretty much what I like is having a little bit of gapness on each wheel, especially if I'm running in the tugs, because I want to make sure I clear and also have enough space to react, and also enough space for the springs to rebound and also to react better onto the toe. Now, having a little bit of space will definitely help me out with that. Unfortunately, guys, we are definitely gonna have to do more modifications. Unfortunately, since I did get that 1-inch spacers, I completely panicked, just because for some reason I thought the 1-inch spacer bolt-ons were the smallest ones. It looks like I was wrong, so there's definitely a lot more out there in the market, but I'm gonna have to order that for another time. I'm just gonna have to drive safe in the time being. Now, I am pretty sure the reason why the tires are cutting the fender is because I might be turning a little too aggressive where I get carried away. But in this case, looks like I'm gonna have to drive a little bit safer for you guys. But in terms of how the Maxspeedingrod feels, you guys, they feel phenomenal. Now, the old Maxspeedingrod coilovers, they're only for like 330 bucks, you guys. For these ones, it's just 100 bucks more, but they make the biggest difference. Alright guys, so it looks like I'm gonna have to end the video here. Unfortunately, I couldn't get you guys too much tow test footage just because my clutch is going out on my car, so that's gonna be for a next upcoming video in the future. So don't forget to subscribe so you can keep track of that. But one last time, you guys, big thanks for Maxspeedingrods for sponsoring this video and for upgrading my Civic FA5. If you guys want to check out the same coilovers I did, the link will be down in the description. And another thing too, you guys, Maxspeedingrods was kind enough to give you guys 10% off your next order. Don't forget to use the code HUMILITY to get you guys 10% off the next order. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video today. Please leave any comment and give this video a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video.